Good afternoon, everyone. This is our March webinar from C11 at the University of Gloucestershire. This is Ali Shahbaz. We have an expert speaker today, Simon Jones. We're going to talk about his experience in cybersecurity and the organization. But before that, I would like to ask my colleague, Riel, to share with us some news and update on the announcement regarding the C11 activities. This is Ali Shahbaz, academic subject leader for cyber and technical computing at University of Gloucestershire. Riel.
Okay, thank you, Ali. Again, my name is Rael Pentland-Smith. I am the Business Development Director for C11, our Cybersecurity and Digital Innovation Center, which is again part of the University of Gloucestershire. So we're pleased to have you join us for our webinar series, and I just have a few brief announcements before we turn it back over so we can get on with delivering the information that you've come here to listen to. Firstly, a couple of announcements about upcoming webinars. Our April webinar will be held on the 7th of April, again a Thursday from 12:30 to 1:30, hopefully capturing that sandwich opportunity or lunch in a catch-up. And it will be focused on CINAM. For those that don't know, CINAM is a leading organization in the regional area that is focused on bringing together business, education, and government to promote and drive the cyber agenda of the region. Very dynamic organization. We've got Chris Dunning-Walton that will be speaking to us, one of the directors of CINAM, to tell us a bit more about what's going on in their organization and some of the initiatives that they're involved in to support businesses from all sizes, from startups to SMEs to major industry players. So that's bound to be a good one to keep in touch with, good one to connect with. So please feel free to join us on April 7th. And in a minute, you'll see that coming up in the chat, we'll stick some of the links into our Eventbrite site if you'd like to register for any of those events. Then going on from there, we've got our May webinar, May 5th, and that is going to be a talk about patenting software and intellectual property, being delivered by Andrew Dunhall, an experienced UK and European patent attorney from Hazeltine Lake and Kempner in Bristol. And he's going to be delivering a really, I think it's going to be an interesting talk in terms of the patenting process for software, as well as different applications of intellectual property. And that's scheduled for May 5th. Again, further details will be available on our Eventbrite site. A couple other quick updates. You've heard me talk in the past about our bootcamp graduates. Well, we've got some CVs presently available. Now, these are graduates coming out of a 16-week intensive training course on 3 specific areas: a cyber analyst, data science, and software engineer. So although they're not undergraduate programs, these are intense kind of entry-level programs, and they're looking for opportunities to engage with employers or employment in our region. If you've got a need for technical or software capabilities and you're interested in having a look at these CVs, please be in touch. Again, we'll put some links and some contact information into our chat. We've got Laura Whitmore as one of our primary contacts, or you can contact us here at C11, and we can direct you into to getting a hold of those CVs or finding out more about that program. And then lastly, just a quick reminder, we are, of course, in the planning stages, or continue to be in the planning stages, for our Cyber Tech Symposium, scheduled for July 7th, to be held here live at C11 at the Gloucestershire Science and Technology Park out at Barclay. And we are planning that symposium around a key theme around critical infrastructure, or the protection of critical infrastructure from cyber attacks. And then, of course, we will be linking heavily into issues about managing our cyber skills gap, what's going on, what the opportunities to tap into those pathways, or those graduates coming out of some of the different pathways, and then how that blends into the opportunities and situation going on in our region. So please have a look. Again, we'll put a link on the chat for our Cyber Tech Symposium. If you'd like to stay posted on the updates and our speakers list as we begin to release that information, let us know and we can keep you in the loop. So thank you for that. I will turn my camera off and turn it back over to Ali to continue with our webinar. Bye now.
Thank you very much, Rial, for the update and for the links and information regarding the activities going on in C11 now until July. All right, go back to business. Our guest speaker today, expert speaker, his name is Simon John. He's going to talk about his title is pragmatic. It's a consideration in assuring supply chain information security. Working in Ascentor, Simon John's business development manager at Ascentor. He has 15 years experience in the information security sector. Simon is well-known face in the corridors of our defense and security customers. His military roots means he understands the critical role information risk management and cybersecurity play in keeping organizations safe. Simon, we are interested to hear from you and learn from your experience. Whoever attending now, if you have any question for Simon, either you put the question in the chat area and I'm going to read it for Simon to answer it, or you can raise your hand after Simon talks, and then you can ask your question directly to Simon. Thank you very much, Simon, and we appreciate your time and glad to having you today. So we are looking forward to hear from you, Simon. The mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Ali. Yes, Simon Jones, Business Development Manager with Ascentor, and the presentation I will be providing this afternoon is considerations in assuring supply chain information security. And I'm joined on this call with Stuart Headley, our Commercial Director, and Dave James, the Managing Director of Ascentor. And at the end of the presentation, Dave will be helping to answer any questions that I'm unable to. So first off, just going to cover what this presentation is going to go over at a fairly high level. But first, we're going to cover what is assurance, why we need to bother with assuring information, a brief overview of information classification, then look at how assurance is applied across physical security, technology and cybersecurity, and personnel security. And they're going to put it all together in a form of an example use case just to see how all these things interact. And at the end, there'll be a question session. So starting off with what is assurance? So this description is taken from the Government Functional Standard 007, which is part of a consistent and coherent process that governments have introduced for working with and across government. And I've highlighted the key words and issues here, should we say, that I think are particularly relevant when it comes to understanding what information assurance is. And that is that what we're looking at is objective information to support decision making on the basis that that information has integrity, and the processes involved with its storage, dissemination, etc., are also resilient. So when we look at what information assurance comprises of, depending on which school of thought you subscribe to, but essentially we're looking at information assurance consisting of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, where confidentiality is essentially the need to know, or preventing unauthorized or inadvertent access, essentially. Integrity is all about preventing changes, alterations to the information, and availability is all about maintaining accessibility to those who need to know it. And all of this is against a backdrop of people, process, and technology. So the next stage is information classification, because as with security in general, if you don't know what it is you need to secure, then you aren't going to secure it. Similarly with information assurance, if you cannot identify information that is of value that needs to be protected, you're not going to protect it. So in terms of the CIA model, we need to identify the sensitive information that we hold. And in commerce, we're familiar with terms such as commercial in confidence, company confidential, and even personnel in confidence. Those terms mean specific things to a certain business. They're not particularly, they are general in nature, but another business in the same industry area may have a different labeling mechanism for the information it holds. When we look at government and defence, they have a very standardized system to identify information assets that are of value, starting with official sensitive, secret, and top secret, to name some of them. And these terms can be appended by additional descriptors to indicate whether it's UK eyes only, mission sensitive, that sort of thing. But the crucial thing about this method of labeling information assets is that this system is used by allies and our partner governments. So there's a common understanding of everybody's sensitive information assets. And that's fairly crucial when it comes to securing any supply chain or partnership. Because if one member of a supply chain is not following the processes as laid down to all other members, then you basically create a weak link in your chain of suppliers. So why do we need to assure and protect information? Well, I guess the subject of cybercrime is fairly well known nowadays. And in a nutshell, cybercrime is on the increase, as illustrated by recent Institute of Directors and the report's Cybersecurity Breaches Survey that was conducted last year, and also the Office of National Statistics have come up with some interesting statistics. Interestingly, in bullet point 2, there is a tendency that a majority of employers intend to maintain increased home working, which may be not surprising after the experience we had from lockdown. But only 1 in 4 businesses actually have any cybersecurity policies which cover home working. And only 1 in 5 businesses have policies which cover the use of personal electronic devices. Where I'm coming from here is that while we're moving to this mode of operation, from a supply chain point of view, if businesses aren't applying standardized processes for securing or identifying their information, then from a supply chain security perspective, this is a bit of an issue. So I think some work needs to be done there. And also, we're used to seeing headlines like this. There was a recent vulnerability that affected a large number of global organizations called Log4j. It just so happens that the Log4j vulnerability was then picked up by nation-state attack teams who tried breaking into defense organizations, governments, using this vulnerability to get in. So this is another reason why supply chains need to be improved from a security and assurance point of view to reach a level of resilience that is resistant to this sort of intrusion. Similarly, from an intellectual property perspective, it's important to safeguard our information, designs, plans, drawings, so that we can maintain a competitive advantage. And the picture here is of a 5th generation stealth fighter, which looks remarkably similar to the picture of this 5th generation stealth fighter. Very similar designs, very similar looks. You might think that somebody had borrowed somebody else's ideas. Who knows? And then, of course, you've got your hacktivist groups who are active around the world for whatever reason. The symbol here is relates to the hacktivist group called Anonymous, who we traditionally associate with doing bad stuff, although more recently, depending on your point of view, might be considered to be doing good stuff in support of an Eastern European country. But yes, protecting our information and maintaining a competitive advantage is absolutely key to protecting our national security interests. And the way we do that is that we secure and assure our supply chains. If we don't, then we're leaving ourselves open to compromise. So how do we go about this? So confidentiality, integrity and availability relies upon arrangements for physical security, technology and cybersecurity, and personnel security. And the above are typically supported by a management system or an information security management system of some description, which is essentially a documented set of processes and procedures. And these documented sets of processes and procedures are designed to provide a degree of consistency in operation and reliability of operation of how information assurance systems, information security systems are operated. Because there is a human component in all of this, and the weak link of any chain tends to be a human one. Never mind the technology aspect. And I'm just adding this here that the Centre for the Protection of National Infrastructure is a useful source of information for things security-wise. Their website is available. I can get a copy of that later. So if we go look at physical security aspects, this would relate to the fabric of a room, a building or a site, whatever the area is that's been designated as a secure facility, somewhere where you process sensitive information. And it covers things like access control throughout a building, from entering the building at reception, progressing through to a lift area, having used a swipe card to get to that area. And then when you get up to a first or second floor to another reception or holding area, there might then be further swipe access required to get to a door which has a PIN access or PIN code to get into it. And in that room will be your sensitive information store. It could be that elaborate. We also look at the construction of walls, doors, locks, depending on the level or sensitivity of the information you might be working with. Again, you might have to have some rather elaborate arrangements around how your walls are built. Partition walls might not be particularly suitable. You might need to reinforce a partition wall with metal. You might need to have a bullet-resistant door. It all depends on the classification of the information you're required to hold. And you're looking at alarms, monitoring systems, CCTV cameras, so monitoring access to the physical structure of a room or a building or a site even. You may have a 24/7 alarm system, which is monitored around the clock throughout the year. And then there are the processes for managing and controlling access and monitoring, etc. Again, this is all designed to enforce standardization of operation and consistency. And UK Defence, for those who are familiar with something called the List X process, Defence have now revised that process and introduced the Facility Security Clearance Assessment process. There's some details of that on our website. So from a technology and cybersecurity perspective, this is usually the area that most businesses focus on, sometimes in entirety, whenever you mention the term information security or information assurance. That said, we've already covered the physical security aspects. Yes, technology and cybersecurity is an issue and is part of the overall considerations that need to be made. The main thing to remember is it's important that whatever technology is used has to fulfill the customer's assurance needs, as well as suiting the purpose and operation of the business. There's no point in introducing a piece of technology that nobody understands and is difficult to use and operate, unless it suits a particular purpose the customer wants or needs. And when you're applying technology or cybersecurity assurance requirements, it's important that they are rolled out consistently across the entire supply chain. Again, this comes down to a weakest link situation, where if somebody is not applying security controls that other members of the supply chain are, then that one business can become a weak link that can compromise everybody else. UK Defence have come up with addressing this through the Cyber Essentials scheme, which some of you may be familiar with. Cyber Essentials scheme is designed to raise the bar, shall we say, to a minimum standard, which in itself is designed to deter potential aggressors or attackers from attacking any business that has implemented Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus. Also introduced the cybersecurity model, and this introduces additional controls based around a risk profile. Risk profiles that are used range from not applicable through very low, low, moderate and high. It's also a cumulative process, so if you are obliged to comply with moderate requirements, then you also have to implement any requirements at very low and low, in addition to any other requirements that are dictated by moderate risk assessment. The details of the cybersecurity model can be found in DEFCON 658 and DEFSTAN 05-138. And then for businesses, industry organisations that are obliged to operate at official sensitive and above, there is a requirement to go through formal accreditation of any network or ICT systems that are used to store, handle information at official sensitive or secret, or sometimes above that. And details about that are contained in Industry Security Notice 2017/01. And then there are personnel. So in recent months, there's been a particular emphasis on insider threat. And also there's been a revision of how defence and government, well, defence in particular, manage security clearances and vetting. From a commercial perspective, we're all familiar with the fact that when you start a new job, you go through background checks. A business is obliged to conduct these checks under legislation, just to confirm that whoever they're employing is entitled to work in the UK, and also that they don't pose an immediate security threat to that business. For government and defence, there's a slightly more rigorous approach that's applied, starting with Baseline Personnel Security Standard, or BPSS, which basically clears an individual to work up to official sensitive. And then you have the security cleared level of vetting, which allows somebody to work up to secret with occasional access to top secret. And then there's developed vetting, which allows people to work at top secret, and if there's a need for any other sensitive requirements, those as well. And clearances for government and defence are managed by the National Security Vetting Service. And always remember that loose lips really do sink ships, and this adage is as true now as it ever was 80 years ago. As I say, people can be the weakest link in a chain, and if they cannot be relied upon to not talk about whatever it is they're doing that is sensitive, then they are basically at risk of compromising you, your business, and your customer. I mentioned the UK Defence have recently upgraded the system by which they manage vetting, and that new system is called the Industry Personnel Security Clearance Assurance Process, IPSA. And more information on that, DEFCON's industry security notices, can be found on the gov.uk website. So putting it all together, so for this, we're going to imagine that it's a business that has never worked with sensitive information per se, and is coming at this from a no knowledge perspective. So what we have here in the table is, along the top we have an indicative timeline over a 4-month period, and on the left-hand column we have the areas that need to be attended to confirm that the business is able and ready to work with sensitive information at whatever level that might need to be. So where we would commence with this is with what we, Ascentor, refer to as being a gap analysis. And the purpose of the gap analysis is to understand where the business is now in relation to where it wants to be against whatever standard that the business is obliged to work to. So from a physical security perspective, this would involve an on-site security assessment of in-place security arrangements. So CCTV cameras, access control, the room or the building, sites that will be processing sensitive information, looking at the construction of it, also looking at existing processes and procedures the business uses to manage its personnel, conduct its operations. And also looking at the levels of governance that exist within the business. They may not have an information security management system, in which case one may need to be developed. And from that, a business or a company such as ourselves would produce a report which would outline a roadmap of activities that would need to be undertaken to meet the requirements of whatever sensitive information level is needed. That would then be reviewed. There'd need to be some internal decisions about what steps to take next. And possibly one of those steps would be an operational readiness review. And the purpose of the operational readiness review would be to understand in more detail what work is actually needed to achieve the overall aim. Because one of the dangers at this stage is to try and boil the ocean when all you need is to run a hot bath. And by focusing on the hot bath example, you actually then save an awful lot of time, effort and money, rather than starting to look at introducing security systems you don't actually need, or security systems that might be too great a spec to what you actually require. So once the OR is completed, a review would be needed, and another decision point to understand what the next steps might be. And they would involve design options for physical security controls, ordering of equipment and furniture, installation of those security controls, as well as updating or creating required process documentation, the creation or update of an existing management system, further reviews, resulting in an ultimate point where either the business is in a state where it is ready to proceed, or it's in a state where it is able to undertake an external assessment or audit to assess its suitability to handle sensitive information. And then, while being a concurrent activity, I've detailed this slightly separately, but from a technology point of view, depending again on the level of information you need to hold, handle or store, you need to obtain an idea as to what amendments, updates, configuration changes need to happen to your corporate network, and whether or not in some cases, certainly if you're working with secret, if a separate IT system needs to be installed. So if you're, say, working with defence and you have a need to hold, handle, store official sensitive information and communicate with MOD, then you might need to comply with a cybersecurity model risk profile of moderate. You need to look at your corporate network to understand what that means, what changes need to be introduced. There will be design considerations to take on board and decisions to be made as to what further equipment, what changes are required to your networks. A period of procuring equipment, installation and configuration. And then supporting that, of course, is the operating procedures for patching and other operational processes that are involved with managing a piece or set of ICT. Testing and review, and then commissioning and accreditation, or accreditation. And that is that. So in summary, we've covered off what is information assurance, brief look at information classification, why we have a need to secure information, how, looking at the physical, the technology and cyber and personnel aspects of assuring information and securing it. And then we put it together in an example use case. Are there any questions? Let me share my screen.
Thank you very much, Simon, for this experience and for the information you shared with us. I think if you keep, oh, that's fine. That
That's
we
fine.
we will go back to the slide if someone asks a question about it. But
All right, there you go.
yeah, thank you very much. I will now wish we open the floor for any question, but really very informative talks and the slides, especially the last one, which we are interested in computing. Would like to have some flowcharts and some information about how you're going to do that. And that was my initial question when I've started to listen to you earlier, Simon. How are you going to do that in terms of the, and I like the idea, the example you said you would like to boil the ocean. It's really, sometimes that's a really very good example to share it even with our students when they try to develop something. It's what you are trying to do. Just focus your energy, because there is no time, especially in the cybersecurity. We have to do something and make an action in a short time for certain things, not everything. So I would like to open the floor now. If you have any question, drop it in the chat area or raise your hand. Feel free to raise your hand, then we can actually we can give you the mic to ask your question. But I'm asking now, probably I would like to raise a question here. How, because I'm working in the university and my job is to provide resources, human resources to the society and to someone like you, Simon. I'm asking about the skills. How do you, what are the skills you are required to do so people like you, or they work for you? So our graduate, for example, they would like to be in this business. What do you need from them? What kind of background, knowledge, experience, technical knowledge? Can you share that with us, please?
Yes, I'm sure we can. So we're actually going through a recruiting process at the moment, and Dave, my MD, has been actively involved in that and has taken up quite a lot of his time. So Dave, would you mind providing a bit of an overview as to what you look for in a consultant?
Yeah, hi everybody. Dave James, MD of Ascentor. Resourcing is a real problem in cybersecurity, as we all know, and that's why there's such a proliferation of cybersecurity courses coming online, which is a really good thing. I think what should have come across in the slide pack was that cybersecurity isn't just about technology; it's also about people and process, and it's a business thing. It's a business issue, and it's all about risk. So we don't want to boil the ocean. We can't reduce all risks to zero. It's just not realistic. So we have to understand risk, and that's the key point for the consultants that we have, is understanding risk. And risk, as I mentioned, is a business issue, and I don't feel necessarily that comes through as well in the BSc sort of courses. And we tend to take people who have experience of managing risk, because they understand it. We have our own internal sort of training programs so that we all have a common understanding. But really, the feeders for us is somebody with a good technology background and somebody with a good logical business process head on them, because the two things go side by side, as the slides intimated.
Thanks, David. We have a colleague from business school as well in this talk. So I'm head of department for the technical part of the cybersecurity. So we are always struggle with some students, or the student, they are struggling to find their path, whether they go technical, but they would like to be in cyber sector working on, but they would like to be involved in that, but they don't seem to have some technical, or they don't like it. They would like to have some management side of it, and that it seems that is the right path for them. So what is your advice on that for these people? But you mentioned also you need some people who has some technical background as well. So how can we escape from this dilemma?
Yeah, well, I think we need both. Is the point? We need, you know, and cyber is such a broad church. You know, you can go into cyber and just be technical, and that's fine. You can be a SOC analyst, or you can be a pen tester, and that tends to be the technical side of cyber. We don't. We offer some small pen test services, but we don't provide SOC analysts and the like. We're more in the design space, so we help companies and organisations, and including the government organisations, design secure systems. So you need a technology background for that, but you also need to understand business context, management systems, risk, etc., etc. Otherwise, you end up trying to boil the ocean. And if as you know, it's the second time I've said it. It's the fourth time it's been said today, but it is a real problem. How do you know what is good enough to protect your systems? Yeah. So the more valuable the information, obviously, the more you've got to do to protect it. So that's a fairly simple concept, but in detail, how do you do that? Well, that's the risk assessment process, understanding the business, understanding the technology, and coming up with a pragmatic and appropriate solutions to meet the business needs. So I keep coming back to business. I keep coming back to needing rounded individuals, those that understand the technology and the capability that technology has out there, but also balancing that with an understanding of business risk.
Yeah.
So CISM is a good qualification provided by ISACA. That gives you a good management piece. The CISSP qualification from ISC squared is a rounded, gives you a rounded individual. And latterly the NCSC certified security professional scheme, which is going through a bit of a change at the moment, but that was also another good one, which gives you that balance between the technology and the business side and risk side.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, we always struggle with our students, and you mentioned that this is not for BSc. You need some people who have some experience. But I would like just to recap. When you say both, does that mean one individual, they need both technical and management, or within the team you need a combination of both? Just to make that clear, please.
Yeah, sure. So ideally, our consultants have a good understanding of technology and a good understanding of the business and the management, and that will see us through 80%, 70 to 80% of our engagements, one individual. When there are specific areas of technology and design that are required, which are a bit more niche, then that's when we would call on a security architect to help design the security solution, but balanced by the risk advisor, who will be able to confirm that the risks are being appropriately mitigated using that technology. So most of the time one person can do it. Sometimes you need both, and usually when you need both is when it's either a niche technology or it's developing a new capability, brand new capability, which which doesn't exist in the marketplace.
Yeah. Still no question in the chat area, but I do have a question as well. It's when you do your work in terms of the risk management and risk assessment, does the sector of application affect, for example, working with the defense or with the NHS or working with a fintech company? I mentioned fintech because my colleague at the business school, they already run within the university MSc in fintech. So we do have that course within the university, but I would like to hear, and also we have health tech as well. So I would like to know how actually your work influence on the sector.
How does our work influence on the sector? So most of our work, probably as you can guess, is with government, and government has a set of fairly prescriptive standards on how risk is managed and or assessed and then managed. So we're pretty much following what the government approach is. However, there are changes afoot, and how you want to manage risk is becoming less prescriptive, and you can use different tools to suit the purpose. The latest thinking from the MOD is secure by design and continual assurance. So instead of just creating a secure solution and walking away, you've got to create a secure solution and make sure it stays secure. It's all common sense stuff, but sometimes these things get forgotten. So secure by design is almost a continuous risk assessing. Every time there's a change, we need to risk assess, and that proves a real challenge for some organisations, especially the smaller organisations like ourselves. We're a 15-person company, and the cloud's been a blessing there because we can outsource quite a lot of our security to a bigger organisation. So I'm not sure I've really answered your question there, Ali, but
yeah. Well, I can imagine there are differences from the nature, but that's my hypothesis. But I would like to hear it from you. But you address that, of course.
Yeah.
There are some common and there are some differences depending on the sector itself. We have a question from Philippa, my colleague. She's asking: is the issue the nature of the sector, or if it is a physical good or a service that is being produced through the chain that is particularly important?
Is it the physical good or service that is being produced through the chain that's particularly important? So I think what we've focused on with this is it's about information or information assets. So it's if we focus on the good or the service, and we wrap around secure information assurance around that, wherever that good or service goes, we put the security wrapper around it, then we should have a secure supply chain. I think that's answered the question. Please shout if not, Philippa.
Thanks, Philippa. Let us know if I'm sure Dave.
Hi, can I follow up?
Oh yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So I was just wondering. I absolutely take on board what you're saying, but do you feel that the points at which the mitigation might be needed or the nature of that mitigation differ at all if you're dealing with something that is passing through the supply chain as a tangible output, or whether it's something that is more knowledge-based or service-based? So I was just thinking about those things. Forgive me, I'm asking as somebody from business rather than from within a technical sort of domain.
Sure. So if we focus on a physical good, then a product, let's call it, a black box. That box probably doesn't have anything sensitive in it when it's going through the supply chain, in terms of inherent data. It may have, but predominantly it doesn't, and it's not until the user gets it. However, depending on the user, that box could, if it's being used in a very sensitive environment, then it could be tampered with on the route, and therefore could be opening all sorts of backdoors in systems and networks. So I think the answer is it depends on who the customer is. If it's an accountancy firm versus a sensitive government department, they are different business contexts, and the sensitive government department would very, very much be concerned about the authenticness of its boxes that it's buying, whereas the accountancy may not be so concerned. In terms of services, it's more about the information. So the information flow from the supplier all the way up to the customer needs to be secured, and that, as Simon mentioned, is covered off by three areas really: physical, personnel, and technology. And you need all three to work in concert and be cohesive to be effective.
Thanks, Philippa. Thank Dave. Well, no question in the chat area, but I'm interested, Simon, in the chat, in the flowchart you mentioned, and I will just ask some questions regarding. You mentioned that there are 3 months, and this is just an example, or or 4 months from August to October. Is that a timeline which is you usually to use, or that is just an example for certain case?
This is an example for a certain case. It really depends on a number of variables, shall we say, as to how quickly or how and not quite so quickly, the entire process can complete. It's down to the business appetite and ability to produce evidence that needs to be assessed in order to produce various documentary artifacts. It's down to the availability, if you need to go through formal accreditation, the availability of an external assessor. That can take months. Procuring some equipment can take an awfully long time. So this is an indicative timeline for a particular event. From a facility security clearance perspective, typically that is anywhere between 6 and 9 months to complete, although in a rather unusual case, we have known it to be all over and done with in 10 days. But the priority to get that done in 10 days was huge. So a special case was made.
I think it's worth adding in there, just to Simon's point there, especially on the physical security side, if you've got to build a room within a room, or you've got to add on physical, bricks and mortar, then you've got to factor in the availability of bricks, which at the moment I know, because my eldest son is trying to buy a house, and he keeps getting delayed move-in date because they haven't got enough bricks to finish the job. So there's a world shortage of bricks. So there's external factors that sometimes impact at the time frames.
Well, there's a shortage in many things nowadays. It's one of them is the silicon and the chips problem nowadays, and that's affect with many industries such as cars. I've heard that cars now, if you need to buy a new car, there is a timeline for 6-7 months.
Yeah, with
waiting list. Yeah. But I like this diagram because we teach our students on such a specific things to when they do, whether it's a risk assessment or other, but that's usually rely on, and I'm sure a colleague at the business school, they do that too, because that's something the student would like to, we would like them to learn how actually things works in reality. And I would like also, we are thinking, just this is your personal opinion, we are thinking to establish a master course in cyber human factor, and that's for non-technical side, to cover the non-technical. We do have master in cybersecurity, we do have master in fintech, financial technology, and health tech, but we would like to offer master in cyber human factor. So probably I'm going to contact you after that just to get your opinion about what can we add. We do have a course map, but probably we need your input as an expert in the area, or as someone who would like to have a graduate from that course, and what you would like to have from them as a skills or knowledge. So
yeah, happy to help.
Thank you. We still have time. I'm going to just final call if you have any question or comment to ask Simon or and Dave. Please raise your hand. If not, please join me. And thanks our speakers, Simon Jones and Dave James, for their brilliant information and brilliant slides they share with us, and it's priceless information for us from the experts. And thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate that, and we will be in touch with you soon. So we need your experience. Probably we need you also as a guest lecturer for our students, so they can learn from you, if you don't mind. Again, we are asking probably a lot, but we rely on you, somebody like you, to share best practice to our student.
Sure.
Thank you very much, and
pleasure.
Have a nice day, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.